Welcome to another episode of Purchase to Profits. I'm Seth Ferguson. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss our daily interviews with successful real estate investors. Our guest today formed his San Antonio-based company in 2010 and currently owns over 1,000 doors. Devin Elder is the principal of DJE Texas Management Group and is also the host of the DJE Podcast. Devin, welcome to Purchase to Profits. It's great to have you on the show.
Thanks so much, Seth. Good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. Thanks for taking the time. I'm really looking forward to this.
Yeah, me too.
So to kick things off, tell us about your real estate goals right now.
Yeah, the goals, very simple. Want to get to 5,000 doors of multifamily. Nice. Yeah. With a certain percentage of ownership. So we have done we've done deals a lot of different ways through partnerships and things like that. And so, the criteria that I have for my company right now is to acquire those deals with a certain percentage of ownership, meaning that, we're basically the primary principal on the project and just scale it out. So I'm having a lot of fun building. I'm a systems guy. I think goals are about 1% of the deal. And then the rest of it is all systems, right? So I like to set a big goal, and 5,000 is a big, exciting, challenging goal. And it's like, I don't know how we're going to get there. And I think we're going to need new skill sets and new relationships to make it happen. And to me, that's the funnest part, is just building it. And so that's a big, exciting, challenging goal. And then reverse engineer it. What does it need to look like kind of on a daily basis? Another thing about a big goal is that it just forces you to abandon a lot of small thinking immediately, right? Mm-hmm. So, okay, if your goal is to have one deal and that's going to kind of be it forever, you're going to have a certain set of tools, processes, systems, et cetera, relationships. But if your goal is to completely, do something big, then you've got to abandon a lot of that small thinking today. And that's very, very focusing to do that for me.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because one thing that I've noticed on this show interviewing guests is, let's say a guest has a goal of owning $2 million of real estate. They'll hit that goal. But then we have another guest that will say, I want to own $500 million worth of real estate, and they'll hit that goal too. You achieve what you set for yourself. So might as well go big.
Yeah, that's so true. And I know it's hard for people to wrap their heads around it, and I still struggle with it too. But, I started reading Think and Grow Rich when I was in high school, right? And I didn't really, took a while for those seeds to kind of take hold, but it is the truth. And you do get what you ask for, and you do get what you focus on. And it's amazing how when you put something out there, you put it on the whiteboard, or you start working towards it and reverse engineering it, the pieces start to show up. It's very strange and weird, and I've learned to just kind of appreciate the process.
Yeah. And for yourself, you're over 1,000 units right now. What changes did you have to make about how you thought about real estate and your business to even hit that 1,000 unit mark? Because that's a pretty impressive achievement in itself.
Yeah. I mean, there was a time when that was an unfathomable goal. I think what had to happen just tactically was the segmentation of responsibilities, and to constantly shed duties that were not personally my highest. I'm the CEO of the company. And I started with nothing and started with a little rental house, and it's been an organic growth path since then. I also didn't start with any money. So it's been very, it's been a long ladder to climb up, and it's been step by step. And so I think a lot of that was just kind of overcoming my own thoughts about what do I need to be doing on a daily basis. And so getting teams in place to handle certain pieces, and basically just looking at dollar per hour activity, right? So as a CEO, your dollar per hour activity needs to be a certain amount, and figuring out a way to build systems and frameworks and talent to make sure that things are getting done without you. So it's just a constant refining process of going through that. But really, I guess to bring it more tactically, created a spreadsheet of every task in the business, and there's 100 tasks on there. And then I sort it by, the dollar value, the complexity, and it just lets me kind of filter out and just basically give all those tasks to other people so that I can focus on really the two most important things, and that's finding the next deal and then putting the capital stack together.
Yeah, that's really cool. Nobody's ever done that before. with the spreadsheet and the dollar value to each activity. I really like that.
Yeah. So I basically do like a 1 to 10. It's not like an absolute, this is worth $47 an hour type thing. But if you have a task, and then I have the complexity level 1 to 10 and the dollar value 1 to 10. And then I know for the complexity level 1 to 4, I can filter that and go, well, my assistant can handle all that, and she should. And if I'm doing any of that 1 to 4 level complexity stuff, that's a problem for the business, right?
Yeah.
And then I can look at the higher level complexity stuff. And it really comes down to I personally should be doing like 8 things, right? It's talking to you on your podcast. It's talking to and communicating with our investors and communicating with brokers and making sure all the systems internally are humming along. And there's not a whole lot else that I should be focusing on.
Yeah. And you mentioned getting the team involved and your assistants. Lots of our viewers and listeners, they're at that stage where maybe they own a couple properties, but they're still working on their own. What tips would you give somebody to start building that team so then they can concentrate on those, most productive activities?
Yeah, it's a great question. I had a very organic and long process going through that myself. Yeah. The first thing, I think the first step is to develop I'm a spreadsheet guy, right? But I think you develop a spreadsheet, and in the first column, it's a task. In the second column, it's the complexity of the task, and then the dollar value, and then who you can assign it to. And you get very granular so that you build out, because it's very easy to just come to work, or you got a business, I had a day job for years while I was building this up. So I was doing both, right? I think a lot of people are in that position. But I think you define all the tasks, and then you figure out who can take that over. One of the things that was very frustrating to me when I first started using an assistant, but it's turned out to be a real blessing, is I really had to stop, slow down, document a process to the nth degree. And it was maddening for me because I'm a hard charging entrepreneur. I just want to go get stuff done. Right. Yeah. And ironically, you've got to stop and create a process and documentation in order to hand it off. And so the standard that I have now for creating the training is I literally need to be able to pull somebody off the street that can read and write and have them be able to do that task. And so that's the standard I have my training. So now I've created a library of hundreds of videos for everything from our CRM to how we process underwriting to everything. And so I think you just got to get real granular like that. It's the E-Myth, right? I think. Yeah. A lot of folks are familiar with that, but it's really dissecting the business to, at a high level, a process might have 10 steps, and within each step, you have maybe 10 to 20 to 30 tasks, and you can give most of those tasks to somebody else, and they don't have to necessarily be skilled. If you create a little training video, 2 minutes, here's how to do this thing, and then you can start to hand it off bit by bit by bit, and just understand that you've got to be very granular in order to give that to somebody else. A mentor of mine, fantastic guy, super awesome all-around guy, but he's also worth over $100 million. He was telling me something one time that just struck me like a bolt of lightning. And he said, if you're going to grow, you have to learn to work through other people. That's just the bottom line. You've got to learn to work through other people, because we all have, obviously limitations on how much work we can get done.
Yeah. And what impact, what's the impact once you brought in your first assistant to your business? How was your business affected, and how did it grow after that?
Well, like I mentioned, it was very frustrating at first because I wanted to just hand stuff off. Here, take care of this, right? And maybe if I brought in somebody that I was paying $100,000 a year, that kind of person could do that. I've structured my company very differently in that we are extremely lean. We have almost no payroll, and everything is project based. So,
gotcha. Okay.
If we pay our underwriter per hour, right? We don't hire somebody in-house at $60,000 an hour to handle underwriting. And I've basically applied that to really the whole business. So, the process of having to slow down and create all the training and everything was very painful for me. But then I realized in the end that was what was necessary. And then once you start to get a taste of it, wow, I do this task couple times a week or whatever. And I never have to do that again. It is like, I mean, as being like a solopreneur for a few years and a guy that had a family and was working a day job and doing everything himself, to start to slowly give tasks to somebody else and realize I never had to do that again was like, it's like the biggest blessing. I mean, huge, huge improvement.
Yeah. I'm sure you did the happy dance at home.
Yeah, absolutely. I still do it every day. Every time I create a little training and then I set it up, send it over to my assistant. And she's like, got it. I just, I smile every time that happens, and it's every day.
Yeah. And you mentioned at the start, you started off with a single family home, right? So
yeah, that's right.
What was that transition? So what attracted you to the multifamily space, and at what point did you make that leap up to multifamily?
Yeah, good question. I was fortunate in that I met some people very early in my investing career that were buying large apartment complexes, 100, 200 units. And at the time, I thought that was crazy. I just couldn't even imagine it. And they were, high net worth people. They'd come out of corporate, a big corporate exit, or they'd been in corporate world and done well. And so I didn't see myself in that. I wasn't in that kind of strata, but I could at least be around it. And I think that's very important, is proximity to people that are doing what you want to do. So I was hanging out with some of those folks for years, and I just started in single family because I didn't have any money. So I said, I need to start somewhere, but I'm eventually going to get over to multifamily. So I, was beginning the very first deal with this idea that I was going to be in multifamily at some point. And it took several years, and the first thing was, to do a deal and see that it made money and it worked. And okay, that worked. And then, it's very easy to dissect this retroactively. At the time, there was a ton of uncertainty, of course, right? I don't want people to get any impression that this has been an easy journey at all. But did the first deal, and it was like a BRRRR deal, right? Your listeners may know that: buy, renovate,
refinance,
finance, repeat, whatever it is, rent, repeat, right? Basically, you fix a house, you put a tenant in it. And I did that, and I was able to refinance most of my money out and build this little system where I didn't have a lot of equity in these deals because I didn't have much money starting out. So was able to do that and build up enough cash flow. And so the short-term goal, like over, I had like a 2-3 year goal to replace my W-2 income. So it's kind of 3 steps to way oversimplify it. 1, do a deal. Okay, this works. 2, replace my income and quit my day job because spending all that time and energy at the day job was not going to accelerate my investment portfolio. And then 3, go buy these larger multifamily deals. And so that's been, the process over the last few years. So I started out with the end in mind to get into larger multifamily. It just took me a while to get, you got to have a decent balance sheet and liquidity. And I built that up through single family.
Yeah. Oh, that's really cool. And now, like we mentioned, you're over 1,000 units. What routines or rituals do you have, maybe daily or weekly, that helps keep you focused on your real estate business?
Yeah. The biggest thing for me, this is just a personal preference. I have to have a huge goal. And if I have a huge goal, everything is compelling me towards that. And I almost get obsessed about it. And so I've had a few points in my life, like quitting my day job was huge, super scary. But when I did it, it was this huge milestone, and I actually hadn't really thought past that. And so it's kind of weird, and I'm sure some people can relate to this, but you achieve the goal and then you get a little bit depressed because all that you were striving for and that worthy opponent that you had in that goal, is your worthy opponent's gone. And I started to realize how much I needed that worthy opponent. So, my dad's like, when is it going to be enough? And it's like, well, I think as long as I'm alive, there's going to be something huge and crazy out there that I don't know how I'm going to get to, because I need that worthy opponent just to feel excited about getting up every day. And so that's really my number one thing is personally, for me, the way I'm wired, I need a big goal out there that I don't know how I'm going to get to. And that lines up everything else. Because if I have that, then I go, man, I need to take care of my health so I can be sharp. I need to bring on the best people to help me execute this. I need awesome advisors. I need all that stuff to get to this big goal. And it kind of makes everything, forces everything else into place, having that big goal for me.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about a Keystone deal. So a deal that made a big impact on you and your business. Is there one that comes to mind out of all the ones that you've done so far?
Yeah, I mean, I could talk about any of them in different ways. They've kind of all had their impact. I'll talk about one that we bought last year that was kind of an interesting story. It was a 130 unit deal now. We actually bought it as a 106 unit. It was really bizarre, and converted some units. And it was there's a lot to it. There was a lot to that deal. So I don't know if you want me to kind of just do a high level on that project, or what you want me to dive into.
Yeah. So let's, so how did you source the deal?
Yeah, it's through a broker. I started in single family. I still have a single family business. I brought on a partner a couple of years ago. He's doing an awesome job running that business. But I didn't have to entirely let it go, which is cool because it's a great revenue stream. Mm-hmm. So in the single family world, you're always talking about off market, right? And we buy a lot of stuff off. Well, we buy it all off market, right? Distressed. In the multifamily world, 100 plus units, don't quite see that as much. I would love to do more of those, but usually it goes through a broker. So I called a buddy of mine that was a broker, said, hey, we're looking for, 100 to 250 units in San Antonio, blah, blah, blah. And he literally responded like that afternoon and said, well, here's one that just fell out of contract that we have. It's all teed up. So I went and looked at it that afternoon and sent a contract like the next day on it.
Nice. So, that's awesome. And so what initially attracted you to that deal? Was it because you mentioned you added some more units? Was it that potential, or was it location? What was the big blinking light?
Yeah, I mean, it was really like the purchase price that it had been under contract for. It worked right away, and the underwriting worked. So like our underwriting, we typically underwrite a 5-year hold on these larger multifamily deals. We're raising capital from investors, and we want to get to, like, I tend to focus on one metric, right? Like a 2x equity multiple. If somebody invests $100K in a project, I want to return $200K or close, $190K, right, over the hold period. And that's through cash flow, refi proceeds, sale proceeds, and return of capital. So I want to double people's money, and it's hard to find those deals. But this deal penciled for, around those metrics. And so that was it right there. We didn't actually discover the whole unit thing until we did the inspection and the due diligence walkthrough. And during that, we said, wait a second, there's a spiral staircases in 24 units, right? They connected 2 one-bedrooms on top of each other, and they were calling them 3 bedrooms. And so I said, I think let's convert it back to its original state. And so that's what we did. And that didn't hurt, because now we're buying, the price per pound that we bought it for by adding 24 units, our basis was like super low. So it was, that became a nice upside to the deal, even though I didn't know that when we first put it under contract. Even it was pretty wild.
That is pretty cool. It's almost like, you're walking into a candy store and then you find an extra shelf or something, right?
Yeah, I'll never forget. So one of my partners on the deal, he's in Boston, which is like a world away from San Antonio, and he flew down to tour it with me. And literally, we're both walking through a unit, and we looked at each other and we were like, "How many of these are there?" We were asking whoever was giving the tour. And we said, yeah, pretty sure we can convert these back. So during our due diligence, we got the owner's permission to poke out some drywall in the upstairs units, because it converted into like a little bedroom, what was the kitchen. So we cut out some drywall and I said, there's got to be plumbing cutoffs behind there, and cut it open. And there's a plumbing cutoffs. We're just going to throw some cabinets in here and convert it back. Property's built in 1974. And sometime between then and us buying it, they done this weird conversion. Yeah. There was a lot of Section 8 tenants on the property. We've converted it to a market property. So just a lot going on that makes that kind of has a special place in our portfolio.
Yeah. So at that point, once all the conversions were done, I guess converting back to the way it was, were you pretty aggressive with that so you could go and do a refi?
No, it's kind of weird. In retrospect, I would have done like a bridge loan into a refi.
Yeah.
We actually got a loan, like a nice fixed loan right out of the gate. And it was kind of interesting. This is unique. I haven't done this on another deal since, but we raised all the equity for the rehab up front, which made it really nice to rehab because we just had it sitting in the bank and we could just knock it out and not worry about bank draws and stuff like that. So we've got a really low leverage on the very low leverage on the deal right now. And we probably won't refinance it. It's cash flowing. The next step would probably be to sell.
Yeah, for sure. And you mentioned you're always underwriting to about a 5-year hold period. Are you changing that to a longer term based on where we're at in terms of the market cycle?
Yeah, we just did one that we closed in Q1 with a 6-year hold. Yeah. It's just what we're seeing in terms of getting deals to pencil. As far as a big correction, if we can get 10, 12-year maturities on our debt, that's usually what we like to see. We don't tell investors, like I see packages all the time, investors are underwriting a 10-year hold. I don't know that I could raise capital for deals on a 10-year projection. We only want to hold it past the 5 years if we have to, right? We kind of want to be in and out. And typically, the way it's shaping up, we're in and out a lot quicker than 5 years, but I don't want to set expectations with investors that, hey, we're going to turn this thing around in 18 months, make everybody a bunch of money, right? Because that may not be the case.
Yeah, for sure. And maybe, do you have any tips for somebody out there who's just starting to raise equity to purchase a property? Any tips or best practices to start those conversations?
As far as like having an equity conversations?
Yeah, approaching potential investors. Maybe it's their first deal and they're not really sure where to go.
Yeah, two things that come to mind. I would recommend partnering with somebody that does have a track record, because your first deal is not about making a bunch of money. It's absolutely not about that. It's about establishing your track record, and that needs to go well, because if it doesn't go well in your first deal, there's not going to be a second deal, right? Yeah. So find somebody to partner with that has a track record that will let you speak much more confidently to prospective investors. So that's one. I would say I don't advocate that people go out. If we're talking about 100+ unit apartment complexes, which is like the space we play in, I don't advocate people going out and trying to figure that out the first time on their own. Partner with somebody that's already done it. And then for the conversations, have a sample deal package, where you put together, hey, look, this is kind of this is not an actual deal we have under contract, but this is what we're looking for. And when we get it under contract, it's going to look very similar in terms of the return profile, maybe in terms of the rehab budget and everything. And that way you can start to talk through stuff with people. And then, 2 months later, you might have an actual deal to put in front of them that looks very similar, and you've already had those conversations. I also recommend people do a number of things if they're going to raise capital for deals, and that's create a company, get somebody to do a nice brand, logo for you, build a website, or have somebody build a website, and start doing a monthly newsletter. And just start staying in front of people once a month, talk about what you're up to. And when you have those conversations with people, put them on the newsletter. I tell everybody to do this, and not too many do, but that, if you're serious about doing this, create a monthly newsletter, send it out, and grow that over time, and those will be your investors in the future.
Yeah, no, those are some good tips. So Devin, how has getting into real estate changed your life so far?
It's completely changed everything about my life. I cannot imagine, like a lot of entrepreneurs say, I cannot imagine ever going back to a desk job. It's so incredibly different in every way. I'll kind of talk about the work side. One of the things is there's no bureaucracy. First of all, I don't really have anybody on payroll. I've got my assistants on payroll, and then I've got my single family business, which is like a whole other animal. But for the multifamily business, I'm using third-party property management companies. I'm using attorneys, advisors, this whole team, but nobody's on payroll. So if I don't gel with somebody or they don't do a good job, I don't work with them. There's no politics. There's no hemming and hawing, hiring and firing. It's very simple and clean. And I absolutely love that. And then the second thing is I've got full control over my schedule, and that I cannot imagine living another way now. Right. So full control. If we're going to go to Disney, that's fine. If I'm going to go play golf this afternoon, that's fine. I love to work. So I work whenever, I work all the time, but it's by choice. And then of course the money, right? The money's created an incredible amount of freedom for my family to do all kinds of things. And, that's whether that's living where I want to live, driving when I want to drive, doing different things, vacations with the family, being able to give money to various churches and causes and things like that. It's like, seriously, it was like going from black and white to color to be able to have that kind of resource, right? Living life up to, my mid to late 30s in black and white, and then going to color. There's not a comparison. And that's why I did all this stuff, but it's been amazing, for all those reasons.
No, that's awesome. So you've got your podcast, you've got your website. So where can people find you if they're looking for some more information?
Yeah, easiest way would be the main company website. So that's DJE Texas, Delta Juliet Echo Texas.com. You can see everything there. You can sign up for information. We got videos, podcasts, all that stuff. If you spend a little time on the site, you can see how to schedule a call with me if you want to do that. And that's probably the best catch-all for everything.
Oh, that's great. Well, Devin, just want to say thanks so much for taking the time today and sharing your success with us.
Awesome. Seth, thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. And to you, our viewers, I wish you well in your journey from purchase to profits. See you next time.